Good afternoon. Welcome to session 4 of European Entrepreneurship and Innovation in the Stanford School of Engineering. Today is February 1. My name is Burton Lee. Today we're focusing on European market entry for Silicon Valley startups with two outstanding speakers from local valley companies, American companies who are in the process of moving to Europe. Our speakers today are Darian Shimy, Vice President of Engineering from Weebly up in San Francisco, and Gabriel Hubert, who is with the New Markets team at Stripe, both up in the city. Also would like to remind people who aren't following Europe terribly closely, this week is European Startup Week, Startup Europe Week, all week, February 1 through February 6, February 5. There are events all over Europe in major European cities showcasing startups from the local ecosystems. I invite you to visit their website. There's a lot going on right now this week, celebrating, promoting, publicizing many of Europe's top startups in all the major European cities in every country in Europe. We're now pleased to go into our first speaker, Darian Shimy, Vice President of Engineering from Weebly, who is going to talk to us about what's happening on the Weebly European scene. Darian, thank you very much.
All right, my name is Darian. I'm the VP of Engineering, and I'm an engineer. And what I'm hoping today is to impress upon you an engineer's perspective of internationalization. I have been at a bunch of companies over my career, most notably eHarmony. I was there for 5 years. I believe I was about the third engineer who started there. When I left, we had about 45. After that, I was at a social media analytics company called Intensity, and then I made my way to Weebly, and it will be coming up on 4 years that I've been there as well. And all these companies, we've done some form of international expansion. I've made a ton of mistakes doing it, and I'm hoping to share a lot of those with you and kind of let you know some of the motivation behind it. But first, let's talk about Weebly a little bit. So Weebly is an easy drag-and-drop website builder. We have offices in San Francisco, Arizona, New York, and Berlin. We have 271 employees. We've been translated to 15 different languages. We're used by 30 million users across 170 different countries. And their pages are hosted to 250 million users every month. Now, if there's one thing you can take away from my talk today, it is this. As your business evolves, so must your international strategy. So one strategy is not going to take a company from its start all the way to what we consider a major success. That strategy is going to have to evolve as the company changes, as the market changes, as your product changes. And to illustrate that, I'm going to take you through a hypothetical company and kind of layer in some of my learnings from there. So stage 1, we have getting started. We have an early startup company. You may have 3 or 4 employees. You don't have a product yet. You're not profitable. You maybe have enough runway for 2 or 3 months. Do you care about international expansion at this point? Absolutely not, right? When you talk about it, this is what comes up. You should be so lucky to have people from the international community wanting to use your product. That is not your problem right now. Right now, you're just trying to get domestic traction on your product. So what is your international strategy? It is none. And this is a really good strategy, and I don't want to forget it. This is really important. At this stage, you have very limited resources. You have very limited time. And what you need to focus on is getting your product, getting a good fit for where you are. International work is a lot of work. It is a lot of overhead. It is a big expense that a small company cannot bear at that stage. So you do none. And when an engineer gets this, what does he do? He'll take it and he'll make decisions based around there. Text is going to be scattered all over the code base. He's going to have error messages popping up in English. When he stores a dollar amount, there won't be a currency column right next to it. He'll make a lot of decisions to make his life easy. And these are things you're going to have to pay for later on in the company's life. So stage 2. So fast forward 2 years. At this stage, we have gotten domestic traction. We're starting to do well. We start seeing some revenue coming in. We probably have a team of 8 to 12 people, a lot of them engineers right now. And we start looking for ways to make money. So we take a look at our traffic. Where are our users coming from? We all accept We expected the United States to be the #1 driver, but then we see some anomalies, some things we did not expect. We see traffic coming from Canada, from Great Britain, from India of all places. And then we realize that these are countries where we have predominantly English speaking, where they can use our product. Well, if it works here, what if we translated it to French? Can we capture that French market? Or German? Can we get into Germany with a simple translation? So we say our strategy is going to shift from none to a one-size-fits-all. What we're going to do is we're going to try and take the easiest path to reach the largest number of countries. A lot of this is taking all those strings that the engineers have put all over the code base, putting them in some external files and getting them translated. So let's talk a little bit about translations. When you start with translations, everybody has used Google Translate. It is cheap, it is fast, it is not very good. It is good at telling you the meaning behind it, but it is not going to be very sexy. You're not going to get the marketing message, the pitch that comes along with it. So beyond that, and this is something we actually tried at Weebly, crowdsourcing. Have your users translate the content for you. You don't like it in English, you want it in French? Go ahead. We built a tool for them to go ahead and do that. There are companies now that will help you do that for you, integrate, and things like that. We didn't have that several years ago, so we had to build our own. And when we did that, we realized translations take a very long time to come in. They are never complete. And often, because my French is very poor, I couldn't tell a difference between one translation and the other, which one should win. So then we moved to a firm. We hired a company. We would send them our text files. They would translate them for you. This was extremely expensive. One language was anywhere between $8,000 to $12,000 to get off the ground. When we translated, it took anywhere between 1 and 2 weeks. Translation quality was definitely higher, right? But it did come at a high cost.
Sorry, Darian, can you just mention that number again? How much per language?
It was about $8,000 to $12,000. They actually charged per word with discounts and everything, so that was, I want to say, about 6,000 to 8,000 words that were translated. And they don't double translate, so if you use the same word twice, they pull it from the database and things like that. But that worked well, and the biggest problem was, as a small company that's innovating constantly, we needed translations to come in constantly. And all these new features that came in, we would give them 4 or 5 sentences that needed to be translated. Well, they have minimums, because a lot of times they contract out with translators in foreign countries. So when we really needed that Hungarian translation, it was about $600 to get 2 sentences to come in. You end up not doing it. It also takes a long time. We want to push that feature out as quickly as possible. So then the foreign language translations that started off with the high quality start deteriorating over time. The fourth option was for us to use individual translators. Now, there are no unicorn translators that I'm aware of that will speak and translate French, German, Spanish, English, Chinese, everything. So you end up hiring 1 or 2 that are specialized. This is obviously very expensive, but you get the highest quality. So we get much better translators. So if you think how long companies agonize over a name, or a word, or a phrase, or a service mark, and it comes to the translations, they'll just translate just about anything. It doesn't work that well. Okay, so this is Chinese. This is what we wanted to say, drag and drop, something we do really well. We have a drag and drop builder. This is what was translated. Drag and spill the water. This was not done by Google Translate. This was a high quality translator. A human actually did this. We have this, which we meant to say trusted by 30 million people worldwide. This is the second slide I showed you guys. This is pretty important. It's all over our website. And this is what it was translated to. It is arguably accurate, but not what we wanted to say. We had one case, I couldn't find it before coming in here, that somebody had told me, we have an oops page that shows up if something goes wrong. And one of our translators, I think it was Polish, translated it to, wasn't literal, it was a little translation, but more slang. And they translated it from oops to oh Jesus. And they felt it was very offensive and we shouldn't make light of religion like that. So we quickly fixed it for them. We have other issues. So we have a call to action, try it free. We want you to sign up. We spent, I can't tell you how much time we spent trying to come up with try it free, the A/B testing. You know, try it now, get started, start now for free, start now. Every permutation you could possibly think of. And we got it just right, and it fit in nicely with the page and everything. And then when we go to German, it turns out like that. German is a very long language for us, and it makes it very difficult to fit in the tiny spaces we have. We actually built a tool that will take the longest word from every language we have and put it in our website so our QA team can go through there and see which ones are going out of bounds, which ones are wrapping incorrectly. You can't wrap buttons, and that definitely would wrap. So that actually made the cut, and that's actually, I think, on our website right now. But spacing is hard because engineers and designers don't take that into account for foreign languages. Data scale is a big issue when it comes to the design. And it's one thing that always gets caught at the end. So we do all these things, we get past all these problems, and we get some feedback from our users, right? They said localization, we gave them translations. We forgot so many things. We forgot about dates and numbers. Do we use a comma or a period for the thousand separator? We forgot about payment providers, right? Not everywhere uses credit cards. A lot of people are debit cards or even cash. How do you take money from cash on a website? I have no idea, right? We are charging in dollars, not euro. If I was going to sell you something for 50 euro, a lot of people don't know, is that more than $50? Is it $75? Is it $80? You got to do the math in your head. And then you might get hit with a foreign transaction fee on top of that. There's a whole bunch of things. Your support system, your documentation. None of that's translated. And then you start to realize that it's a lot of work. Not only do you have to do all those things, you have to do them every time for every country you go into. At this stage in our company, we don't have the manpower to do that. So what do? We punt. We let it go. We say, we'll fight this fight another day. That day has come. Stage 3. We're about 5 years old. We're profitable, hopefully. Maybe we have about 50 to 100 employees. And we have plans. We have goals. We have board meetings. We're starting to become a real company with forecasting. We realize we need to drive growth. We need to hit our numbers. So what do? We start looking for ways that we can increase our revenue stream. And we realize that international is a great place for us to monetize, right? We know we haven't gone in there very well, and we feel that the international market can bring in more money than the domestic market. So we change our strategy for the third time. Now we become very targeted for each country, right? Before we were looking at a one-size-fits-all for everyone. Now we're going to make sure every single country is done properly. We know it'll take a lot of time. It'll be a lot of work, but it'll be worth it. So the first thing is, where do we go? We have a lot of countries to choose from. We can't just pick them all anymore, right? We may have to be in each country that we go into. This comes at a high cost. Your legal team, your finance team, everybody's going to be involved in this decision. So where do you go? So in the past, there's a few strategies we've employed. One, the easiest is pick the English-speaking countries. Half the work is done for you, right? And this is where you'll see a lot of companies go into. They will go into the UK. They will go into Australia. These are easy places. Canada's a big area that they can get into rather easily. But then going beyond that, you can kind of cheat and say, where are our competitors, right? If they're advertising heavily, they've been there for a while in an established market, that might be a good way for you to jump into blindly as well. Neither one of those two options I like all that much because they're not really giving you data helping you prioritize. Looking at conversion rates and signups is a really good way. So you can say, hypothetically, let's say in the US, our conversion rate is 5%. So when the users sign up, 5% will actually become a paying user. And we look at our conversion rate in France that has good signups, yet the conversion rate is only 2%. Well, we feel, based on those signups, we can get that 2% up to the 3%, or up to the 5%. And now we can start putting a number next to each country that we can hope to get. So the next is, how do we build and ship this? So this is where it becomes a mess. And this is where I feel internationalization in some sense becomes a tax on engineers. So from a build standpoint, and I've tried both ways, we have the model where all the engineers are in the corporate office, the main office, and they'll do the development for all the countries that are needed. This doesn't work well because engineers are easily stolen for other projects. It's hard for them to focus on these markets, and they're not really in touch with the real product owners who are out there, those country managers who are helping getting the work done. So what we have, the other model is where we actually send people out to a foreign country and go do the work, and this is what we did at Weebly. And I sent the email out to every engineer and said, who would like to go work in Berlin for 90 days? And we're paying for everything, right? Everyone raised their hand. That was the easiest task I ever had to get done. We ended up sending 2 people out there. They worked with our 3 country managers. We had one from Great Britain, from France, and from Germany. And they all sat in our Berlin office and basically worked on translations, getting Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts, getting the payment providers, everything we needed to do a deep dive in those countries. We did a phenomenal job. Didn't finish everything, came back, continued to work on it, but that relationship has been established.
And
right?
Darian,
Yeah.
how long did that take to set all that up?
It was 90 days. Well, so it took us, the project was 90 days, but leading up to that, I want to say, was probably about 6 months of work. We had to establish the GmbH in Germany. We had to get office space, a lot of tax filings, a lot of other work that had to go in tandem with that.
And how did you find a German attorney?
That is a good question. We probably contacted our local attorneys, and then they forwarded us out. Same thing with accounting and support, PR. A lot of those things are outsourced right now that we will eventually bring in-house over time. But yeah, we definitely started with a skeleton crew out there to kind of get up and running. Our CEO speaks fluent French, so when he went out there and was interviewed, it went really well for him giving his talks. So the other thing I want to talk about is shipping software. And this is a nightmare I even face today. So most companies do an agile development style, and they will deploy multiple times per day. We deploy 5, 6, 7 times per day. Feature is ready, we ship it. And the problem is, you don't always have time for translations and do proper testing in those countries. So when we deploy things, we end up breaking things in those countries. And also, if we try and be aware of when we deploy the time, a good time to deploy and have a maintenance window in the US is a really bad time in Europe. That's when they're up and running and using your service. So once you go international, you really don't ever have a good time to take your site down for maintenance. So on the shipping side, there's 2 strategies we've looked at. One is to have a single monolithic app that everyone shares, and then the international users just suffer from it. The second one is to have a US domestic app, and then we deploy separately for the international. This also causes problems because the features in that international start to deviate as their release times are a little bit longer. Quite honestly, there's not really a good answer that we've found for that. So right now, what we've done is we've created a new translation system for us that uses a combination of human and machine for a very short time period so a French user will never see any English. And there are numerous things that we have in our build environment that will cause the build to fail should English ever be shown to anybody. So we're trying to be very hard and respectful to keep that going. I remember when I was at a tent city, we used SAP for our expense reporting. And I did something wrong, and the error message came up in German. I was completely appalled. I'm like, how can they expect me to use this software? Now I know how our users feel, especially if they get half the website is in the wrong language. So just to summarize, there is no single strategy. There are multiple strategies, and those things evolve over time. And as long as you're willing to have those things change and not set in stone, I think you'll be set up for much greater success. So with that, thank you very much, and are there any questions?
So let me kick off with a question. In terms of additional cost going into the European marketplace, how many extra personnel have you had to add, kind of as a percentage of your core team? Okay,
so to our core team, we've added a VP of International, 3 country managers. We have 2 full-time dedicated engineers. So those are full-time people who are on that. Part-time, we have our finance department, our legal department, our QA department, and our support department that are all involved in those as well. So they have shared resources, not enough for a full-time position yet, but will be very soon.
How many of those are located here versus Europe?
So the people who are located in Europe right now are just the country managers.
Okay.
And there's 3 of them currently.
And your international, head of international is here?
Yes.
Okay, because they're overseeing Asia.
They will be going to India, Brazil, all the other countries as well.
And why did you pick Europe as your first international expansion area?
So for us, that's a good question. So we had decent traction in those countries, and we saw like conversion rates that can be improved. And we had already done quite a bit of work. So there's a lot of investment in there. We wanted to go in there. So other countries that were things that we've talked about, like China, for example, it is very difficult to get a website in China. You basically need permission from the government to do so. So some areas have high regulations. Like Brazil is very difficult to accept payments unless you're doing business locally there. So a few things that are barriers to entry that we decided to wait on a little bit before we went into those countries.
So you're looking at your user numbers for each country, your conversion rates. Do you go down to the city level and looking at user numbers and conversion rates?
We don't, but it used to be we would have US and everybody else. And now our financials are all broken out by country, so we can see exactly how each country is doing. If we do a marketing campaign in a particular country, we can see the lift that it would provide to the business. This all required a lot of work from finance, from our data analytics team. Our data warehouse had to change to start accounting for all this. When you look at numbers, you want to see them in dollars aggregate, so we have to do translation. So we keep a record of every time the exchange rate for that day, we keep track of, so we can translate it properly to dollars for the reporting.
So you had to have your local accountants here in the Bay Area go in, essentially redesign the accounting system for a global company. How many months did that take, or person weeks? Any idea?
I want to. It's hard to answer because I want to say it's not done yet.
Okay.
It is still a work in progress. I'd say probably a good 6 months to get all that done.
Mostly for Europe at this point?
Yes.
Okay, but obviously you can scale it up, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, the hard thing with international, with a lot of things, there's two numbers. There's like 0, 1, and everybody else. And right now, like, we've done the groundwork for everything, and it should. It should scale just fine.
And
hope.
Did the accounting firms here have the experience to do that, or did they have to bring in affiliates from Europe?
You have to talk to people in every country because the way, so for example, we sell a monthly subscription service. We also sell domains. So basically national sales tax in Europe is VAT. So do we charge that on domains, yes or no? Or I'll make it easier. In the US, do you charge sales tax if you buy a domain?
No.
It depends where you are.
Oh, okay.
Right? It varies by state. Every state is different. For example, in New York, we have to charge sales tax for them using Weebly. We don't have that tax in California. Most people don't know anything about it. So whenever you have nexus in a particular state or country, that triggers the taxes that we have to start collecting.
So there's a whole front. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
So if you do have a company in Europe and you are not collecting VAT, you really should. They will not forgive that amount. You will have to pay it with penalties and everything at some point when you go there.
That is value-added tax.
Yes.
So,
and it's about 25% that you did not charge your customers that you're going to have to fork up. So a quarter of all the money that you pulled in from Europe, you're going to have to remit to the tax authority.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Basically. Well, so you've got the front end that you have to do for each country, but also the back end infrastructure has to be recoded, essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't even talk about data center locality or global load balancing or anything like that. Most people, their data center will be in San Francisco. Maybe you're in Amazon somewhere. You have about 75 seconds of latency between here and the East Coast, and there's 75 cents to go across to Europe. It's 150 seconds of latency for every packet going back and forth. It is noticeable, especially with these new AJAX applications that are basically single app that have a lot of calls behind the scenes. You will see significant delays coming across.
Okay. Question in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have to set up legal entities in Europe?
Yeah, so the question was, do we have to set up legal entities in Europe? And yes, so we do have Weebly. The GmbH is our basically corporation there for Europe. No, we only needed one. Yeah, so So the sales are still out of the U.S., so it kind of depends on the structure and the relationship between the two, but our sales are from our U.S. Company. So by being a U.S. company, we can remit taxes through one tax authority and they disperse out to all the other countries. So that's why you'll see a lot of U.S. companies, they have a presence in Ireland or, that's where they'll be headquartered in Europe. And they basically remit taxes through there and they distribute it out. You collect the same amount. It's just where it goes.
Question over here.
Yeah, sorry, full disclosure. I work with IDA Ireland, the International Promotion Agency. But just wondering if corporate tax was something you considered on your structure when you were setting up into Berlin.
Yes, yeah. Corporate taxes, even exchange rates, or what currencies we would accept. There are three main hubs of what we feel like technology innovation in Europe right now. They're London, Paris, and Berlin. And those were the three countries we gave serious consideration to that we decided to go into. Berlin eventually won out for a variety of reasons. But yeah, all those things come into account.
Question here.
Yeah, I'm wondering, why is that latency so significant?
It's just the distance between here and there. I mean, it's going over fiber and light can only travel so fast. It's one of those things that has not significantly improved in my career, I will say.
No, but like to your business model specifically, is like a 130-second latency, like what difference does it make comparatively to like a 20-second latency?
It's just sluggishness in the application. So when you make the request and that request gets broken up into multiple packets and all those get sent out, each one is going to be slower and slower. So when you have something where you're doing a drag and drop or you're waiting for the server to respond, you start seeing all these delays coming up. And if you upload a large file, download a large video, it definitely has an effect. So right now we're in the process of setting up multiple points of presence across the globe to deliver content faster. Like a good way to get around a lot of this is use the CDN. And these are content delivery networks that will basically take your images and videos and put them on servers that are close to where the people are going to be requesting them.
Which consumers globally, you may not have the answer to this, are most sensitive to latency? Who has the least patient? Which are the least patient consumers?
Oh my goodness.
'Cause this is a serious issue in terms of how much latency is acceptable and how much is not, and it varies from country and region to region.
Right. So I think it also depends a little bit on our. So we have what I'll say like our consumer side and kind of like our enterprise business side, and a lot of those right now we have some fairly strong areas like in Poland, for example. So they are very rigid about latency and performance and things like that.
By rigid, you mean the consumer preferences are very
Yes.
strong?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Yes, ma'am.
For different countries, did you consider translating Weebly's name, or is it always Weebly?
It's always Weebly. We definitely did talk about, do we change the name or something like that? And how do you, going into like France and Germany is a little easier because like the alphabet is very similar. But if we were to go to China, would we keep the same character set and everything over there? So far, we've kept the same.
Hold on, Mario. We have a question over here.
Would you use different subscription models or prices for different countries?
Regional pricing, yes. So your question was, do we use different pricing for different countries?
Yeah, or subscription models.
Yeah, yes. So here we're used to, like most of our subscriptions are 6-month, 1-year, 2-year terms. We have a few that are 1 month, and that's pretty much everybody's used to. So it's up to the country manager to decide appropriate pricing for that region. So we do support regional pricing now. That was a big thing because before, like our subscription tables were very simple. Now they become very complex. Even promotions, like what are people used to getting? What type of discounts? Some countries, I don't have the data, but maybe more sensitive to discounts than others. Just as a funny joke, when we were, I don't want to name the company, but not my current company, one before, we sent out a promotion to the US. And it was a big 4th of July, hey, this is great. And we sent that same promotion right over to Great Britain. And it was not very well received over there. So I always joke that one of my friends who's from Great Britain says 4th of July they celebrate as Drop the Colonies Day, not necessarily the 4th of July. So.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Did you find after you implemented the regional pricing that your decisions would have changed about your selection of that country?
I think it's too early to tell. So our big push came last November, October, November. So we're still waiting for some of that data. January in like the website business is our Christmas season. So anything self-help, if you've been to the gym in January, you realize the parking lot's a mess right now and it'll tail off in February. So this is where we get the big lift. So, and around Christmas is usually there's a natural decline. So I think we need to give it a little bit more time before we get the data and really understand it.
So we have one question here, and then Mario, you're going to be the last question because we do need to bring up Gabrielle. Okay, yes.
So you talked about like where you're locating your team, and especially in the starting stages of the company, how not to like think about international thought. But what if you're making a product that's like very specific to a certain demographic that's not in the region you're working at, and like especially like being in Silicon Valley, you have this advantage that you're around like a lot of engineering talent. Like considering that versus what you said about being in the country and the advantages that gives you, how would you go about like weighing that decision, especially at the starting stage?
That's hard. I mean, there's no substitute for being in the country, like hands down. There is just, and it comes across very clearly if you're not in that country. Like when you do your launches or any releases, they know that you are not there. You know, when we did our launch in Paris, they knew we're a US company, but they also know we have a very strong presence. We're committed to the French language, and we're going to do everything we can to make it right. Before, when we were outside, it was very transparent that we were kind of faking it. So that's a hard one because like the talent is here. You have a good community to help foster startups and investment and money. I would say it probably would depend on how critical that foreign language piece was. But sometimes you got to take the lesser of two evils, I guess, on that.
And Mario.
My question is, coming back to the name, wouldn't the globalization already start with selecting the right name? I'm not sure if you ran into any problems with Weebly in a different language. That means it meant something inappropriate.
Yes,
yes,
that is always a risk. Somebody was telling me, Evernote has the elephant, because that elephant never forgets. That's something I never put two and two together. That is a very US-centric thing. That has no meaning over in Japan, they were telling me. So, but they still have success with it. It's not offensive. But Weebly could be offensive, right? I haven't heard of it being offensive yet. If anything, it was hard for us to get all the domain names. Because when you start off, you can't afford a domain in every TLD that's available. We basically have recently started to get all those. So then you have to see how they're using it, if they legitimately had it, when they had it, things like that. It's hard. It takes a long time. Sometimes you have to go to arbitration hearings and stuff like that. It costs a lot of money. It's all legal expense to get those things back. The sooner you can get it, the better. But when you're starting out, you don't have the money to get 200 domains off the bat.
Darian, thank you very much. We're going to bring Darian up again at the end after Gabriel's Q&A session. Thank you very much. So we have two companies entering Europe who are at very different stages of growth. Talking briefly about some of the similarities and differences. When you go into countries from a design point of view, are both of you basically doing A/B testing, tweaking a user interface design country by country? How do you go about actually through that process of making sure French or German or Italian consumers have a similar but probably not quite identical experience and user interface to work through?
Yeah, so we're very consumer facing. So we pretty much A/B test virtually everything we do. Every homepage, landing pages, even new features, they all go through the same A/B test treatment. When we show our homepage and landing pages in France, for example, we want to have an imagery that is representative of that country. So when people see that, it feels much closer to what they're used to seeing. But it's up to the country manager to decide the direction, how long to run the test, how many tests they want to run, what frequency, and everything like that.
And are they supported by a general design team back here, or do you bring in local designers?
We have a general template that we use. So far, we have an incredible design team in San Francisco and New York that we use. They're all employees of Weebly. But we are just starting in Europe, and we have full plans to start hiring designers, engineers, people for PR and marketing activities out there as well.
Okay. Gabriel, any thoughts?
Being a B2B company, the sort of pressure on A/B testing of all our properties is likely less important. We A/B test checkout very extensively and make sure that we maximize conversion for our users, because that's the promise. With regards to our design team is currently based in San Francisco. The good news is more than half of them are actually European, so if we were looking for cultural proximity there we have it.
And are you French?
I'm French, yeah.
French, okay. From where in France?
Eastern France, Nancy.
Okay, Nancy, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions? Let's see. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Are there countries you went into and had to pull back out? Did you expound on the reasons?
I'm sorry, can you speak up, please?
Are there any countries that you went into where you had to pull back out of? And would you expound on reasons on why? Or were there countries where you studied it and decided decided not, it didn't make any sense to go into? And how did the company balance that against basically global ambitions?
So at our stage at Weebly, we have not, that has not happened. But I will say, like in prior companies, it's usually we don't pull out unless there's some regulatory hurdle that we can't get over. Usually it's kind of, we just put it out to pasture. So we just stop making investments in those countries. We don't do paid or display ads. We don't do any more marketing or PR in those countries. The updates are very, very less, and it kind of just goes off so that the current users who are still on there can remain on there. You never know what may change later on. There may be opportunities in the market that change that let you come back in. But by and large, I mean, with Weebly, it's still too early, and we are, we haven't backed out of anything. We're in fact going deeper in many other areas.
We've not backed out of any of the countries we've gone into. Part of the goal of my team is to prioritize the countries that we want to go into next. And so it would be counterproductive for us to set ourselves up to a challenge that we then didn't feel like facing. So we've not met that problem yet.
Both of you are hiring.
We are.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Both here and in Europe.
Both here
Yes.
and in Europe.
Okay. Are you looking for Stanford students?
Of course.
Who isn't?
Interns or full-time jobs, or both?
Both.
Both. Okay, for this coming summer. So Stanford, engineering, business, humanities. I mean, you're looking for autonomous generalists? You mentioned
the New Markets team and the
New
first
Markets.
people on the ground.
Right.
Every team at Stripe is hiring, and so autonomous specialists are very welcome too.
Okay. And your hiring for Europe is done through here or each local office in Europe?
The recruiting team is both in San Francisco and in Europe. But if you have a great CV, regardless of the end it comes in through, it will make its way through the organization at the speed of light.
Okay. We'd like to thank both of you for coming down from the city.